It's time for Bringing the Heat.
I don't think one player will influence things as much as you might think.
Yeah.
With Kade Moore and Elijah Mosier.
It makes another team it's near to impossible to beat anybody.
Minnesota, time and time again, cannot win in the postseason.
Don't want to let people know what I'm thinking and what knowledge I can share to everybody.
Or our lack of knowledge.
Welcome into Bringing the Heat. Elijah Mosier alongside Kade Moore. And boy, do we have a fun episode planned for you. A smorgasbord, if you will. Lots of things to cover. So many things happened over the weekend. But first off, Kade, how are we feeling?
Feeling pretty good. I've been pretty tired lately. Been super busy all day. Still working a lot. And then I'm working out with my friends out at Anytime Fitness here in North Platte. But been really busy as of late.
Yeah, your definition of really busy is not my definition of really busy. I've had the TV tuned to all sorts of different games, trying to catch up with everything. I'm really in a low spot in my calendar of busyness right now. So, on one hand, that's really great. On the other hand, not so much, but pluses and minuses to everything. So, let's get things started off right away with our first wave. And Kate, I hear you got a little UFC for me this week.
Yeah, there's a big UFC card over the weekend that I'll be covering, and so UFC 302 happened over the weekend. The main card fight was Dustin Poirier and Islam Makhachev from Russia, and then Dustin Poirier from the United States. Makhachev was the champion of the lightweight division. He defended his title this weekend, winning in the 5th round with a Darce choke against Dustin Poirier. It was a really good fight. I ended up watching all of it. And I thought Poirier, he was kind of turning around there, making a little bit of a comeback there. He was down in that fight, trying to make something happen, and was not able to overcome that with Makhachev. He's just such a good grappler, and is just really good in all facets of MMA fighting. And so Poirier, he out in his post fight interview, he questioned retirement, and this hasn't been his first time questioning retirement. He's 35 years old, and he has a daughter. His daughter was there watching his fight, so it'd be pretty sad to see him end his career there. But Makhachev, he's on a 14 fight winning streak. He is one of the most dominant fighters in the UFC right now. And in the co-main event, Sean Strickland, the number one contender in the middleweight division of the United States, defeated Paulo Costa of Brazil in a split division victory, which was kind of surprising to me watching that fight. Sean Strickland dominated that fight through and through, and you should have seen Strickland's face after when they announced who won. He was a very puzzled look that all three judges didn't score him winning that fight, and one judge had Costa winning that fight, which I was shocked as well because Strickland dominated that whole fight, and I think it should have been 3-0 pretty easily in the judges' scorecards. And then in the third main fight was Kevin Holland. He won by armbar over Mikhail Juzikov from Poland. So that was a fun fight to watch. Kevin Holland got knocked on his back and ended up winning by armbar there in that fight. But Sean Strickland, he was the number one contender in the middleweight division. He's going to get his chance, his rematch against Dracus du Plessis from South Africa, and so it's going to be a rematch coming up here. Whether it's going to be in the fall or here in the late summer, but that's going to be a pretty big rivalry here in the UFC now, with those two already fighting once and already having an altercation at one of the other UFC events. So that'll be fun to watch coming up here in the UFC. But some more recent things that are about to come up here in the UFC. June 22nd, Robert Whitaker is going to take on Kazmat Chimaya in Saudi Arabia. June 22nd, that'll be a UFC fight night, and then UFC 303 will be June 29th, and that's going to be the return of the notorious Conor McGregor. Will be taking on Michael Chandler in Las Vegas. So that's something I've been looking forward to watch Conor McGregor fight again. So two really big fight weekends there coming up at the end of June.
I'm not a huge UFC fighter person. I can get into like some high school, college wrestling, but just Not a huge professional wrestling, but thanks for that coverage there. I'm gonna go over to the hockey rink now. The PWHL, I talked about a little bit last week, the Professional Women's Hockey League. Well, the championship match was played on Wednesday night. Minnesota beat Boston 3-0. Taylor IC won the playoff MVP. Really great moment for another smaller sport in Minnesota to bring home a championship, just like the Lynx did back in the Maya Moore days. Still chasing that bigger known league title, though. I do have to put that out there. But this all goes deeper in the PWHL. I did a lot of research on this today. This actually goes all the way back to the Canadian Women's Hockey League collapse in the 2010s because it lacked financial stability and it didn't even offer player salaries. And so that led to the creation of the Professional Women's Hockey League Hockey Players Association. They ended up boycotting the PHF, which followed the Canadian Women's Hockey League. And because they didn't feel like that was financially stable enough, Hillary Knight and Kendall Coyne Schofield were a huge part of all of this. They were a part of that five-person executive community, and they wanted a financially stable league. And they found that with the help of none other than Los Angeles Dodgers owner Mark Walter and Billie Jean King. Fantastic story. They purchased the assets of the PHF and they negotiated an actual collective bargaining agreement for the players. Their first game, it reached 2.9 million viewers in Canada. Toronto and Montreal later on in the year had an attendance of 21,105, and both Knight and Coyne Schofield got to experience the finals. Knight captaining Boston and Coyne Schofield with Minnesota. And now, hey, that's a great start, a great win for women's sports and women's hockey. But now the big question entering this offseason is looking for a bigger TV rights deal. This year, all the games were live streamed on YouTube. Some of them were simulcast on other networks like in Minnesota, Bally Sports, some like MSN, but Canada had TSN. So theirs was pretty good, but trying to find a bigger rights holder to bring in a little bit more cash revenue. But huge story that I want to acknowledge to this past week, Kate.
Yeah, it's really big. The women's now have a hockey league that they can continue to grow, and women's sports all across the board are on the rise here throughout the United States.
Yeah, we just talked about the Pro Volleyball Federation last week. And speaking of women's sports, let's dive into something I didn't really want to put on the schedule this week. But so many people are talking about it. It seems like a big enough deal. We haven't really talked about a league in the regular season, but it just feels like it needs to be brought back up. As much as I don't really want to talk about it, I feel like we need to give our own takes on this, and that's the WNBA. It's all around the circles. Everybody's talking about it. You're probably going to talk about. I have a guess what you're going to talk about, but I'm going to let you go ahead with that, and then I'll jump back in.
Yeah, I'll follow the lead of watching First Take this morning, and I didn't know if Get Up was talking about it, but I think Colin Coward on the Herd was talking about it. Was obviously Caitlin Clark and how these other WNBA players are treating her. I can't think of her. Chimay, or is it? His last name was Carter. I know on the Chicago Sky pushed her in the back, but there was some trash talk earlier that caused that incident. But it's kind of puzzling to see how these WNBA players are treating her. Like she's kind of the girl that's kind of putting the WNBA on the map. That's the only reason we're talking about it, is because her and they're obviously not too fond of her, and they're thinking, oh, we've been playing just as good as basketball or even better basketball than her, but we have not been getting talked about. So she's been kind of the catalyst of the WNBA and all the backlash that she's been getting. But I don't know. I don't really agree with it, or agree with how she's getting treated and all the jealousy of all these other players. But I don't know what she can really do about it. But you can really see her toughness out there dealing with all that. But one thing that I did see about the Indiana Fever is they've played 11 games in 20 days. And I feel like that was a scheduling error by the WNBA. I feel like they wanted to get Caitlin Clark out there as much as possible in the early part of the season, but you knew Caitlin Clark was going to be on the Indiana Fever a year ago. And I feel like they should have scheduled her games a little bit, or their games a little bit more differently, because she just came off a full college season, and that she's played 11 games in 20 days compared to these other WNBA teams that have played 6 or 7 games in that amount of time. So that's just kind of a thing to note.
I'm willing to jump on the back of what you're doing and what you're saying. The Fever are the talk of the league. They have 4 out of the 5 most watched WNBA games of the year. It's insane what they're doing. The other one that is on that top 5 list was the game that followed the Indiana Fever on ABC. That is how crazy this whole thing is, and they've played way too many games. The reason why the Fever are doing so bad right now is because they played 11 games in 20 days. Now they have 4 days off before they play only 29 games in the final 80 days of the regular season. And that doesn't even count the Olympic break. That's just not right. Not right in general. If you want what's good for the league, you want the Indiana Fever playing well. If you want what's good for your league, you are gonna allow Clark some time to practice and get used to her new team. Because that team has not gelled together. Because you go back to that altercation, and I saw some people talking about this as well. None of her teammates really stood up for her in that altercation. Because they aren't really won yet. They haven't had time to practice. They just have been playing games after games after games, and that is not healthy. Now, you're talking about that altercation, you're talking about the talking heads, and I'm like, can you give me a break already? I am being overwhelmed with Caitlin Clark news. There's a little bit of Angel Reese in there too, but that's all I'm hearing on the WNBA side. That's all I'm hearing, and I'm tired of it. I said this at the beginning. I don't know how much more I'm going to watch the WNBA this year. Caitlin Clark adds a little intrigue for me. I was never one who watched it before, but now I'm turning on a game occasionally. But if all I'm going to hear about is Caitlin Clark, that doesn't make me want to watch. I'm just being honest there. Can we talk about the Connecticut Sun, who are 8-0? They're the 7th team to do so. All previous have made the WNBA finals. Why aren't we talking about that? And meanwhile, the Las Vegas Aces, they're the reigning champs of the WNBA. Why aren't we talking about them? I wonder why. Oh wait, they've only played 6 games. They've played half as many games as Indiana has. So that's why we haven't been able to talk about them, because they haven't been playing. So WNBA is creating their own issues, in my opinion, and it's creating this media discourse, and it's just making me less interested in watching. I don't know how you feel about what I just said, but there it is. I said it.
Yeah, I feel like that was a huge error on their part to have the Fever play 11 games in 20 days. It's just a horrible thing that was probably one of the worst things that they could have done, because even in their last game that they were playing against the Liberty, and both Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston both were kind of shaken up, getting a little, like, I don't know if they were injured, but you could tell they had a limp to them a little bit towards the end of that game, and that's not what the WNBA needs at all. They need their star players healthy, and you can see Aaliyah Boston too when these altercations are happening with Caitlin Clark, that she's trying to be the peacemaker of this whenever these altercations are going on. But they need somebody on their team that's going to stick up for her. They need some enforcer that's going to go out there and go back into those girls and do it, because I feel like Caitlin Clark, she's kind of out there by herself and nobody's really sticking up for her. But it's in such a short amount of time, it's really hard to stick up for somebody that you kind of just met in the last month or so. But it's just unfortunate to see the jealousy, and the WNBA has what they want. They finally got a person that's going to bring in revenue and bring in people talking about them, and then they're just not being very responsible with it. And it's just very sad to see that they've been complaining for such a long time that nobody watches their games, and now they're trying to hurt their best player, their star player of their league, and it's just unfortunate to see. And I hope that it eventually changes, but that's just going to bring in more people talking about it, the more trash talk and more crazy stuff that happens in the WNBA. Maybe that's what they want, but it's kind of unfortunate to see. But that's,
and you mentioned that.
Yeah,
and you mentioned that game on Sunday, and you talk about that being their 11th game in 20 days. They got beat 104-60 by that has to be by far their worst loss of the year. And not to mention, that was the first game of their in-season tournament on the WNBA side. What are they doing to where they don't feel like they can rest their players? Because I'm not one who's like, yeah, rest your players. Yeah, let's rest your players. But when they're playing 11 games in 20 days, rest your players, for crying out loud. Like, that is a lot of wear and tear on your body. And that's all I'm going to say about the Fever for now. But I just don't like where this is going, because we've talked about it in the past. I know we've talked about this. We've had this conversation. If this season was all going to be all about the Indiana Fever, no matter what, I wasn't going to be interested. I was not going to be interested. I said time and time before, when is this conversation going to turn to talking about the top teams of the league, talking about those top players? Because in this conversation, Aja Wilson's name has not come up once. Not once.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. It's going to be Caitlin Clark, Indiana Fever, and then we're going to throw in Angel Reese every once in a while. And it's kind of unfortunate these other players that are really good basketball players don't get the recognition that they deserve. And it's unfortunate to see, but it's just because if you go around in the street and ask people, who's Aja Wilson? I bet everyone's like, no, I don't know who that is. But if you go up to people and who's Caitlin Clark? Oh, I know who Caitlin Clark is. And then so they're just going to continue to talk about Caitlin Clark. And it's just going to be the fact of the matter. And that's how it's going to be for the time being, I think.
And that's the mismanagement, in my opinion. And that's what I'm going to say about that. I don't know if you have any other thoughts here, but I'm going to say that's a mismanagement of marketing.
Yeah, I agree, because I feel like there's plenty of other good players in this league that deserve the recognition, and we'll see what they do.
All right, let's pivot back to the ice rink. The NHL Conference Finals wrapped up this last week. We now have a Stanley Cup final of Edmonton and Florida. And I want to lead off with the Western Conference Finals. I thought that Dallas, with the way that they handled Colorado after Colorado pummeled Winnipeg, that I thought Dallas was going to get past Edmonton. Nope. Took them 5 games to do so. Actually, 6 games. I got to correct myself on that. 6 games. And what they did last night, Edmonton didn't win that game. I'm going to say Dallas lost that game. Edmonton only had 10 shots on net the entire game and scored 2 goals. Dallas outshot them by 25 shots and only scored 1 goal. That's Dallas losing the game, not Edmonton winning. And before we even talk about Florida and New York, I'm telling you that Edmonton is not at all favored in my book in the conference finals. What Edmonton was able to do via goaltending and defense to keep Dallas from scoring, that's impressive. But you need a lot more offense than that, and because you're going up against a really good goaltender in the Stanley Cup Finals. You're not going to get lucky like that again, because that is a record. Like, the previous record for least amount of shots on net in a series clinching win was 17. You're not going to see that again. And they're not going to be able to do that again, Kade.
Yeah, I agree with that. You can't have that many, or have that geez, I can't talk again. You cannot have that less of shot of goals on goal and expect to win games consistently like that. And but I was able to watch a little bit of this hockey series because of the Pacers. I usually watch basketball over anything unless there's football on. But the Pacers and Celtics series was over, so I'm like, I'm going to sit down and watch this Oilers and Dallas series. And I watched Game 4 when it was 2-1. Dallas was leading, and Dallas scores in the first 58 seconds, and then 6 minutes in they go up 2-0. I'm like, geez. This is the Dallas team that I've been seeing their score lines of them just absolutely just taking care of business. But then in that first period, the Oilers come right back and storming back and tie it up 2-2. And the Oilers were just right back in. And then the second period, they scored 2 more goals and ended up winning 4-2 in that game. And it was a really fun game to watch. And me and my dad were like, this is one of the best hockey games we've ever watched, because usually in our houses, hockey is not something that we do watch, but it was such a fun game to watch. And I'm definitely gonna. Hopefully, the NBA and I haven't really checked at the schedules yet. I hope the NBA and the NHL work together and flip flop their the dates on their games so they don't end up on the same day. Because I'll definitely tune in and watch the Stanley Cup Finals. This Oilers team is really fun to watch. When I was watching them in that game 4.
Yeah, I'll fact check you on that. I don't think they match up at all, but I will double check on that. I know that the NBA finals start on Thursday, and I'm pretty sure the NHL finals start on Friday, if I have that right. No, they
And
start
then
on Saturday.
Saturday, and then the
But
game 2 is on Sunday for the NBA.
yes, game 2 on NBA is on Sunday. So I think, like usual, they have kept them separated and they're alternating nights, which is really good. But I don't know where Dallas broke in this series or how they broke or why they broke. But they were about to be the third franchise from Dallas out of those key 4 professional leagues to make it to the finals in the last year. They were that close. And that's some city dominance. And so to lose in the conference finals and get third place out of your city in those 4 for the last year, I'd say that's pretty good. Dallas fans are somewhat happy. But, you know, they lost this series, in my opinion. Pivoting to the Eastern Conference, this was between the Florida Panthers and the New York Rangers. The Rangers were the best team all year, and this was a really good series. But Florida just played just a little bit better and got the best of the Rangers. I can be honest, I didn't watch this series much. It was always on the same night as the Timberwolves series, and so I was watching that. But Florida had to play their buckets off to win this series.
Yeah, they 100% did. Every single one of these games was separated by 1 goal in the last. Every single game besides game 1 actually was within 1 goal. So Florida had to work super hard every single game to eventually beat the Rangers. The Rangers have a really good goalie and Igor Shesterkin, and he is really tough to get goals around. So it was really impressive that Florida was able to come out on top against this Rangers squad.
Yeah, and so now we go into the Stanley Cup Finals, and let me tell you this. This is not a matchup that is great for ESPN and ABC, which is broadcasting the finals. This is not great for them. They have a team from Canada, and then they have a team from Florida in the NHL finals. NHL, I'm not too unhappy about this. They got a team from Canada, and so those ratings will be really high up there. But I'm going to tell you, I'm completely disinterested. I don't care much about either of these two teams. I will say that my over-under on watching over half of those games is like really low. And give me the Panthers in 5. I just not interested in the series. I think the Panthers are much better. And that's all I really got there.
Yeah, I think the only reason I would kind of for the opposite, I kind of want to watch and see if Connor McDavid can lead this Edmonton squad to win the Stanley Cup, because they have year in and year out have been in the playoffs but just haven't been able to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. So I'm kind of hoping Connor McDavid and the Oilers can get up on top here, and then Draisaitl too, the other guy on their team. When I was listening to their game, I was trying to figure out names because there's just so many foreign players in the NHL. It's hard to keep track of all these long names, but those 2 main guys are going to have to step up for them to be able to win this series. And I say the Oilers are going to win in 6. That's my prediction. I don't know how accurate that is, but that's what I'm going with.
You're going Oilers in 6. Alrighty. Now that is something I was not expecting to hear from you to say. Yes, it'd be cool to see Connor McDavid get it done, but I don't think it's gonna happen. And yes, a lot of why I'm saying that is because of only 10 shots on net last night. That is the main reason I'm saying it. But who knows? We'll see what happens. I will have to say this. This is the 5th straight year that a team from Florida is in the Stanley Cup Finals. So, Florida, it's a hockey state now. I'm saying it. I'm going to put that out there.
And you win.
But let's pivot to...
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say you wouldn't think hockey
No,
and Florida would go together at all. But yeah, continue.
yeah, yeah, you, yeah, good right on saying that. I'm glad you did. But let's pivot to Oklahoma City, and not for the Thunder, but for the Women's College World Series. We've talked about it the last couple weeks now, and okay, I only put down a couple notes here, mainly because I was watching this while I was doing my notes today, and I was watching it before I came down to record here, and I know it's still going on right now. So today is day one of the semis. Winner will move on to the final series, which is a best 2 out of 3. And so currently Florida is beating Oklahoma 9-3 in the bottom of the 6th. If Florida loses, Oklahoma advances. If Florida wins, they'll play another game tomorrow to decide. And then later on tonight, Texas and Stanford. Texas just needs to win to advance. Stanford trying to force another game tomorrow. And I'm honestly just going to let you lead off. What are your overall thoughts here?
I was doing the same. I was watching the little bit of Oklahoma and Florida game and seeing that score where I think it was Florida was up 7-1 kind of shocked me. But then kind of watching they just hit a home run here earlier to extend their lead. But they're looking pretty solid right now, and I'm expecting this game to or for this game series, whatever you want to call it, to go into a second game tomorrow, and it's going to be quite the finish with but we'll see if Oklahoma can make some sort of crazy comeback. And then tonight with Stanford and Texas, I think I picked Oklahoma to win it all, but I still want to root for the Pac-12 and Stanford. Maybe they can pull off the upset against Texas and make a comeback here, but that's what I'm hoping for is Stanford to make it to find a way to make it to the championship.
You know who I picked last week? I picked Stanford. Just to give the Pac-12 a little bit of fire as they wind down. And we saw what will likely be our final Pac-12 After Dark, unless Oregon and Oregon State find a way to meet at the Men's College World Series. We saw our final Pac-12 After Dark last night. I watched the game. Stanford beat UCLA, or should I say this, ACC member Stanford beat Big Ten member UCLA. And that was a great game. And so an ode to the Pac-12 right there. But my bigger story is we were just talking about watching Florida and Oklahoma. Well, I was watching this game, and this was before it was a 6-run lead for Florida. It was a 1-0 game at this point. Oklahoma has a runner on third, and deep fly ball to center field, and Kendra Falby for Florida steps up, facing elimination, catches the ball in a run-saving diving grab out in center field. It was an amazing grab. It actually had the Oklahoma runner all the way halfway home before she realized she had to turn around and tag up. So I kept the run from going in. But then she turns around, and in the bottom of that inning, she is on an 0-18 slump. She has not had a hit all Women's College World Series, and she hits the first inside the park home run since 2014 to increase their lead to 2. Amazing player, amazing for Florida's momentum, and her 2 key plays are main reason why they're up by 6 runs right now.
Yeah, 100%. You love seeing a player that's been in a slump and then is probably pretty down on herself, and then goes out there and makes 2 crazy plays like that, and then she's definitely keeping them alive for sure in this game, and probably flip the momentum of the game, to be honest.
I would definitely say so. I wouldn't ever say that Oklahoma's out of it, but they're down to their final 3 outs. I still think they'll have a good run for it tomorrow, but here's what we're going to say. I'm going to ask you this. Who do you think will be in the finals, and who do you think is going to win it all? And just because I don't want a Big 12 matchup between Oklahoma and Texas, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that we're going to get a Stanford and Oklahoma final, and I'm going to stick with my pick last week, and I'm going to pick Stanford over Oklahoma. As dumb of a pick as that might be, I'm going to go with it.
We have the same exact pick because I wrote this down earlier for my prediction I have Oklahoma and Stanford in my final, but then I'll take Oklahoma to win it.
All right, we didn't plan that at all, and so I was totally expecting you to pick
That's kind of crazy. I
Texas.
had that in my prediction panel.
I totally thought you were going to pick Texas over Stanford, but hey. So I
That's no
can't wait
fun.
to recap those finals next week. But let's head over to the other diamond. And normally we just touch on D1, but not today. We're starting D1 in the Men's College World Series with Birmingham Southern, one of the final 6 teams in the Men's College World Series. Their school closed for good on Friday. They got a walk-off win on Saturday. So then I spent time yesterday watching their game against Wisconsin Whitewater. And Wisconsin Whitewater walked it off in the 9th inning. So this is just a tribute to Birmingham Southern. I don't know what else you got on that, Kade, because I didn't tell you I was going to bring that up, but you might have had an idea. But there
No,
it is.
I did see that on I don't know if it was on whatever Instagram or Twitter, and I thought that was such a cool story that or maybe it was on the news. I don't know. I did see that, and I was like, what a cool story if they were able to end up finding a way to win the D3 or national championship. But kind of a crazy story there that they made it that far. Then they were playing a baseball game, and their school wasn't even a thing anymore. So kind of a cool way to go out,
And
even though they ended up losing.
no kidding. And so now we can slide up to D2. Ooh, we're touching all 3 divisions this week. Isn't that cool? And the reason why we're doing that is because MIAA member Central Missouri made it all the way to the World Series. And they were actually seeded as the number 1 team in Division 2. And in their first game, they lost 3-2 to Angelo State. And in their elimination game today, they lost 4-3 to Indiana University out of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's nice to see an MIAA team make it that far in the D2 championships. But I don't have a whole lot on the D2 national championships. But it's nice to see an MIAA team there.
Gotta honor the MIAA there. So a couple of good stories there. Minus losing both games, but being able to be seeded number 1 has to feel a little bit good. On to D1, and I found a lot more stuff to talk about in this one than I originally thought that I would. So West Virginia advanced to their first Super Regionals in school history as a number 3 seed. I don't know where you want to take from this. I have a full list here, and so you can talk about West Virginia, you can talk about something else, but I'll let you talk about something. But that was cool for West Virginia.
Yeah, I saw that's what I have wrote down right here is West Virginia makes it to their first super regional, and you like to see the teams not in the Southeast or in the Southern regions making it to the super regionals and having a chance down there. And there's been a lot of upsets down here. Southeast Missouri State beat Arkansas in their elimination game, and so eliminated Arkansas. And then Evansville upsetting East Carolina, making it to a super regional. And then we were kind of talking about last week how the Florida, Nebraska, Oklahoma State region that most deserved versus the best teams, and kind of Florida's kind of proven us wrong right now. They're up 4-2 right now. They beat Oklahoma State last night, and they're looking to finish this one out here, headed into the top of the 8th inning, leading 42 over Oklahoma State. So kind of interesting to see how much hate Florida got from multiple different fan bases on how they made it, but they're up right now in the 11th seeded Oklahoma State Cowboys. So it's interesting to see that.
All right, you gave me a lot of routes to go. First off, I'm going to go back to West Virginia because I failed to mention this because we've been highlighting Pac-12, and Arizona was a host of the regional that West Virginia was in. Arizona went 0-2 hosting that regional. That was kind of sad for them, and even sadder for me. I picked them to go all the way. I picked them as my College World Series champions in Omaha. That pick floundered right away, so shame on me for that. I probably should have picked somebody else. I could have gone with Oregon State, and that would have turned out a little bit better. But Evansville, You mentioned them. They're advancing their first ever Super Regionals. And they were a 4 seed in that regional with Eastern Carolina and Wake Forest. That was impressive by Evansville. Huge props to them. Now they got number 1 Tennessee. Best of luck to Evansville. I hope they beat Tennessee because I love a good underdog story. And you mentioned the SEC. You mentioned them. You mentioned Florida. You mentioned Arkansas. I first off got to laugh at Arkansas's face as they're the number 5 seed and they got eliminated by the number 4 seed in that regional, Southeast Missouri, and Kansas State, the number 3 seed in that region, got it done. Once again, I gotta say that the seeding committee doesn't know what they're doing because UC Santa Barbara, also number 1 seed, lost. They got eliminated. There have been 4 1 seeds in their regionals that got beat. In their place, a number 4 seed, a number 3 seed, a number 3 seed, and a number 3 seed. We haven't seen a single number 2 seed advance yet. And if I'm correct on this, there is still only 1 2 seed alive in this entire tournament from their regional, and that's the reigning champions in LSU, another SEC school. So I'm going to leave it out there, and you may want to tag back on this. But, I mean, I just love whenever the seeding committee decisions kind of blow up in their face because they're playing the analytical versus what actually has happened this year. And I'm still not in favor of Florida getting in. We went on that spiel last week. I don't think that they deserve to be in. I didn't think that they should have been in. If you finish one game over 500 and don't win your conference tournament, I don't think you should be in. I don't think you deserve to be in. And even if they beat Oklahoma State, I'm still going to say it because that's my opinion. I'm allowed to be wrong, but I'm allowed to say it.
Yeah, and I was honestly kind of hoping, well, obviously, that Nebraska was playing them, but I was hoping Oklahoma State would just beat them last night and then kind of put them out of their misery. But that's probably one of the last things people want to see is an SEC team that's whatever, now three or 4 games over 500 making it to a super regional. And it's just not fair. If you'd have seen any other conference, you can pick one. If a team was 1 game of 500, they're not making it to the regionals whatsoever. So it's honestly just it's not fair at all. But the SEC is the power conference in baseball and in other sports, obviously, and there's not a whole lot of people can do. But for me, I'm going to be rooting for the teams that are above in the northern United States and in the western. I'm going to be rooting for teams like Oregon, Kansas State. I want to see one of those teams make it down to the College World Series, which that'd be pretty fun to see.
Evansville as well, but
as Evansville too, yes. In West Virginia.
Yeah.
All of them. I would just name the first 2.
I also got a surprise for you coming up, but before I get in that, I also got to talk about this. Georgia Tech and their elimination game against Georgia. They intentionally walked the go-ahead run in the top of the 9th inning with no one on base. What are you doing? I don't care who the player is. Why are you intentionally walking somebody with nobody on base, 1 out, in a tie ball game? That I just don't understand that. I don't care who it is.
See, it's probably they're doing the analytical play, and it came back to bite him in the butt. So I do not agree with that call either at all. It's just trust your pitcher. Trust your pitcher. Come on now.
And also gotta give another ACC team credit. This one's for a good thing. Clemson pulled off the hidden ball trick against Coastal Carolina. It was very funny to watch. Grounder to third base. Third baseman throws it to first. Gets the ball back. Walks and the pitcher covered third base as well during that play. As the third baseman got the ball, he walked past by the pitcher, faked handing him the ball, kept a hold of the ball, and as soon as the Coastal Carolina player stepped off the bag, he tagged him out. Amazing play. Props to Clemson. I enjoy trick plays like that. It remind me of Little Big League, back a movie from a long time ago about the Minnesota Twins and a little kid taking over as their owner and eventually their manager. And they had another amazing hidden ball trick over there. So, got to give my props to Clemson.
Yeah, it's fun to see trick plays in that, whatever sport it is, or whether it's baseball or it's a football trick play. You love seeing stuff like that. And it was I watched that too on Twitter, and it was pretty funny to see that they were actually to pull that off in that stage of the tournament. Because usually you would think that'd be like
All
a
right.
midweek game. We're screwing around, but we're doing it. We're doing it in the regionals.
Let's have some fun. They had some fun. It's my turn to have some fun. I have some trivia for you. And it relates back to college sports. It was not in your list, and that's why I kept it a secret. I'm excited to see how well you do. All right, so we're just going to take the major sports from each season for the men and women. So football, volleyball, men's and women's basketball, baseball, and softball. So 6 sports. Name one of the 3 D1 schools to reach the postseason in all of those sports. There's 3 of them. And I'll tell you, reaching the postseason in football means reaching a bowl game or the college football playoff. I'll put that out there for you.
Okay. Texas is one.
Texas is 1. Do you add another?
Oklahoma?
Oklahoma did not.
Shoot. Oregon?
Not Oregon either. I'll tell you another one that starts with T-E.
Tennessee?
Tennessee is another one of them that did it in all 6.
Tennessee, Texas.
There's one more.
Part of the country you can give me? Or, yeah, part of the country.
I will tell you that it also starts with T-E. All 3 of them start with T-E.
Texas, Tennessee. I'm blanking right now. I don't know what's going on.
Well, I'll tell you, you will remember the school, but not for particularly doing well in any of those sports, but mainly for something else that happened over the winter/spring.
Oh my gosh. Why am I blanking? I have no idea. I'm lost.
Texas A&M.
That is true. Texas A&M. I don't know why. I was thinking of states. I'm like, I already picked Texas, Tennessee. What's another state that starts with TE? But yeah. Blanked on
So,
that one. Got me.
that was
I
really
knew
fun.
Texas right away. I knew I got that one.
Because Texas is right up there with Stanford for the all-year, I don't remember what they call it. Let me look at it.
Capital One.
The Director's
Capital One.
Cup.
Oh, they changed the name.
Yeah, so I think it's still sponsored by Capital One, but both those 2 teams are once again in it. Texas looks like they're going to win it this year. They have been really good in every sport. But you mentioned Oregon. They were one of 7 teams to reach the postseason in 5 of those 6 sports. Others being Alabama, Arizona, Auburn, Duke, Florida State, and Kentucky. But I do want to ask you this. There is one Power 5 team that missed the postseason in every major sport. Can you name that team?
Let's say California. Cal.
Not California. In fact, they made it to more than 1.
Maybe. What about Rutgers?
Rutgers. They made it to 1. They made it to a bowl game.
Shoot. What about a conference?
I will tell you that the conference is the Big 12.
Big 12? God, you put me on the spot here. I'm trying to. No, what would be the.
Well, if I gave you the advance, then you would have known what they were.
That is true. I would have been looking around already for it. Why? I don't even. Okay.
And while you're thinking about this,
Cincinnati. Oh,
Cincinnati, that is the one that missed it in all 6.
because I was
That
like, it's
is
not
an incredible accomplishment because that's really hard to do. To have that bad of an athletic program. To be in the names of Wake Forest that barely got in by baseball, Rutgers, Pittsburgh, who only won was volleyball, but at least they made the Final 4, as well as Arizona State. Their only one sport was volleyball as well. And then Boston College. I mean, Boston College, besides their small sports like hockey and lacrosse, they can't win there either. So that's an accomplishment for Cincinnati. Not one that you want to have, but definitely something that I was not really expecting.
Yeah, especially that they were just so good in football, 3 years ago.
Yeah. You never know whenever it comes to that. So, football scoop. I got that article recommended to me by Google Chrome last night, and I'm glad they shared it with me because, hey, I enjoyed reading it. So, that's going to wrap up this first segment. But when we get back, we got a lot of NBA to catch up on here on Bringing the Heat.
Going out to eat is nice because it's easy and convenient, but if you stay at home and cook your own meal, you can save up to $832 a year. That money could be spent on student debt, or even better, on a spring break trip.
Not only can reducing the amount of times you go out to eat help your wallet, it can give you tremendous health benefits overall. Eating fast food is linked to increased risk of cardiovascular disease, obesity, and other chronic diseases.
Saving money and reducing dangerous health risks are only a couple of the many benefits that are associated with reducing the number of times you eat out.
So stay home and eat, you'll thank yourself later.
Back here on Bringing the Heat, it's time to hit some other short news stories because there's a lot of things to cover this week. And so, first of all, I am going to give a topic that I know Kade would love to talk on. We're going to start with some football action here. The UFL, the United Football League, is down to their final 4 teams, and their conference championships are this week. In the USFL Conference, Panthers will play the Birmingham Stallions. And then in the XFL Conference, the San Antonio Brahmas will take on the St. Louis Battlehawks.
Yeah, and it's going to be a really, really exciting weekend here for the UFL. I think it was a very successful year for the UFL. They got pretty solid ratings, and the quality of play was pretty solid. I think the thing that they're still wanting more of is attendance for their games, but I'm hoping to see some solid crowds out here for the semifinal games of the 2 conferences, and I'm kind of hoping that they can just continue building on this league, and because I feel like it's a league, instead of having these players sit on NFL practice squads, they can actually get real life game reps in the UFL and play for a championship and get those reps. I really hope this sticks around, and I'm really hoping the Birmingham Stallions come out on top for Adrian Martinez quarterback. But that's really all I got there on the UFL. But I'm really excited to see this league's growth over the years to come.
Give me the franchise that is still mad at the Los Angeles Rams for moving away from St. Louis. They know how to party when it comes to football. In fact, they're hosting the UFL championship game, so if those Battlehawks were to win in the conference finals, they would definitely have quite a home field advantage in the championship. Also happening in the football world, Olympic gold medalist Gable Steveson. He went to the University of Minnesota. He signed with the Buffalo Bills this week. That would be your Buffalo Bills. Big signing there. And then on my team, just announced this morning, the Vikings extended Justin Jefferson to a monster extension, the highest paid player besides quarterbacks in the league, and deservedly so.
Yeah, huge signing for the Vikings. Justin Jefferson, arguably the best wide receiver in the league. For most people, that's what he's definitely my number 1 wide receiver. Even though with injuries last year, he's definitely my number 1. He is so explosive, and I'm so glad they got this contract done before the season started, because you have a rookie quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. You do not want your number 1 guy having contract issues throughout the season. That's just a huge distraction. Now they have him locked down for 4 years in Minnesota, and that locks down his number 1 target for J.J. McCarthy now having Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson, and Aaron Jones right behind him. It's going to be a really good offense for J.J. McCarthy to start in the NFL with that many weapons around him. So this is really big for the Vikings to have him ready to go for the season and locked down for the next 4 years for the Vikings.
That cements the future of Minnesota pro sports. Justin Jefferson on the Vikings, Anthony Edwards on the Timberwolves, Royce Lewis on the Twins, and Kirill Kaprizov on the Wild. So really glad to see that. That was great news when I woke up this morning. Also, some other news that we saw over the weekend, because this is a busy, busy sports weekend. Robert McIntyre, congratulations. He won the Canadian Open this weekend for his first PGA Tour win. And who was his caddy? He had his father. So congratulations to Robert McIntyre. Simone Biles won her 9th U.S. all-around title. That is unprecedented and just proves why she's such a great gymnast. And so congratulations to her on her all-around title from this weekend. And a little bit of fun as well. The Tri-City Chili Peppers out of Virginia they unleashed Cosmic Baseball over the weekend, beating the Greenbrier Knights 9-4. Really cool thing to see. And they have 2 more of those games scheduled later this summer that sold out. That's been going viral. Really cool to see. Really glad that they made it happen. It really felt like a Savannah Bananas type of thing that you would see. So now what I want to see is the Savannah Bananas playing Cosmic Baseball the banana ball way. Now that would be even more fun.
Yeah, that would be electric for sure, and that's adds to the game of baseball. Sometimes people think baseball is boring and kind of monotonous to watch, but if you're watching Cosmic Baseball, I'm there for it. I would 100% go out if there was a Cosmic Baseball team somewhere in Nebraska. I would 100% go out there and watch that. So super cool to see that they added that to having some fun nights of baseball like that. It's super cool to watch with all the neon colors throughout the game. So super cool idea by them.
Sports are meant to be fun, and now that's how you have fun. Let's pivot into the NBA. We saved them for this middle segment, and let's start off with the Western Conference Finals. Minnesota, Dallas. Dallas gets the win in 5 games. And in this series, I'm going to say it this way. The superstars were the difference. Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving were unbelievable on offense. Minnesota just couldn't match that, especially in clutch moments and whenever it was time to finish in the closing time. It comes back to the end of game 2 when they couldn't get it done. And, I mean, congratulations to the Dallas Mavericks. I am proud of the Timberwolves for reaching the conference finals for the first time in 20 years. But Dallas, they won this series.
Yeah, Dallas. Just the guard play of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving was just way too much for the Timberwolves, and how you can't really blame them. They were just on fire throughout the whole game, and just in that game 5, then that closeout game when Luka scores 20 points in the first half, and he's going between the legs, step back from the volleyball line. Well, there's no volleyball line in the NBA court, but for everybody that knows where the volleyball line's at, that's where he's shooting from, and he's fading away and just hitting it. It's like there's just really nothing the Timberwolves can do about that. There's just nothing they can do when Luka and then Kyrie's going. Yeah. When
they're the number 1 defense too.
Yeah, it's just crazy how unstoppable they were. Neither of them could be stopped. They both had 36 in that game 5, and then Kyrie Irving, he's knifing through the defense, using his offhand with floaters and these crazy just layups. He's been so fun to watch, and I just love seeing that Kyrie's back to his old self. And there's not a whole lot Minnesota could do, and I thought Minnesota could maybe somehow kind of make it sort of a little bit of a comeback, but just when you have those two guys playing so well for the Mavericks, it makes it almost impossible to come back from that series deficit. But this Minnesota team is a really young team, or has a lot of young players, and has opportunities to grow here with Anthony Edwards. He's still a young player, and the future is bright here in Minnesota, I think, for them.
And so I have some stats that might surprise you. I'll save them for a little bit later. But speaking of youth and stuff, I have some stats that will surprise you. But Anthony Edwards is just the 6th player to average 25 points per game, reach the conference finals, and make an All-NBA first or second team before turning 23. Can you name at least 3 of the other 5 players
that have had, 25 points? What are the other 2?
They've averaged 25 points per game, reached the conference finals, and made an All-NBA team before turning 23 in the same season.
Let's say LeBron James.
Yes.
Jason Tatum.
No.
No? Okay, I feel like, let's say Magic Johnson.
Nope.
Yeah, well, all those guys were old back then. They played all 4 years of college. Say Kevin Garnett.
Not Kevin Garnett. Kobe Bryant. KD. D-Rose. And then this guy I had never even heard of until I looked this up. Amari Stoudemire.
Oh,
those are the other 5. Stoudemire.
Yeah, he was
never even heard of him.
Yeah, he was on the Suns with Steve Nash, and then he was on the Knicks with Carmelo Anthony. But I was not very good there. I knew LeBron was one. Got LeBron. There we go.
It's amazing. He could have a bright future like LeBron, Kobe, or KD. Kind of be somewhere in the middle like D-Rose. Or turn into someone I honestly have never heard of heading in today. I mean, obviously he was great whenever he played back in 05, but I just hadn't heard of him. So we'll see what trajectory continues to go on. And as a Minnesota fan, I'm actually going to save what I'm going to say for later. I'm going to move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. I honestly did not say as much as you probably expect me to about that. But Indiana and Boston. Boston swept the Pacers. Boston just excelled. They're also the favorites. But it was insane what they did.
Yeah, the series were oddly similar because there was a stat from the Dallas and Minnesota series that in the first 3 games, Minnesota or the Mavericks trailed in the last 5 minutes and were able to win all 3 games. And they were trailing the last 5 minutes. That was the first time that's ever happened in NBA history. And then for the Celtics and Pacers, game 1, it was 117 to 114 with 8.5 seconds left. The Pacers lost. The Pacers were leading in all these. And it was 109 to 101 in game 3 with 2.5 minutes left, and they lost. And then in game 5, or not game 5, that would be game 4, excuse me. It was 94-85, and with 9 minutes left, and they lost. So these series were too weirdly similar, and I was kind of hoping. I thought the Pacers after game 1 would actually be able to make a series out of this, but I feel like the Celtics were just too much with Halliburton getting injured, and just the Celtics have so much depth on that team. They're going to be hard. They've been a hard team to beat throughout the whole entire playoffs, and I feel like the Mavericks are also going to struggle with the Celtics depth that they have.
And before you get into the NBA Finals too much, I want to talk about what's next for Minnesota and Indiana. As a Minnesota fan, I would like to see Karl-Anthony Towns traded because I would think we could get some value from him and be able to spend less money on a different number 2 option for Anthony Edwards. But I want to get into this. You mentioned Minnesota as being a young team. They're not a young team. I've included Oklahoma City in this because they're another rising team. But Minnesota average experience on their squad actually over 5.25 seasons. That's third amongst Boston, Dallas, Indiana, and Oklahoma City as well. But their starting lineup, 8 years of experience. That's tied for first. They had a very experienced roster, believe it or not. But you know what's also interesting? Their entire roster combined only has combined for 1 conference finals win besides this season. And that was Monte Morris, who didn't even play in the series. That was back in 2020. Their combined roster before this year was 0-3 in conference finals. This was not a young team. This is just a very inexperienced team.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at, was their playoff inexperience, because really, other than Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert, all those guys have not had much playoff experience with the Timberwolves, like Karl-Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, Naz Reid have had no playoff experience until this year. So making it to the conference finals after finally being able to make it out of the play-in game over the last couple of years has been huge for the Timberwolves. And I feel like the Timberwolves also, in free agency, need to find a shooter. Just a guy that is a 3-point shooter first. And I feel like the Timberwolves don't necessarily have that guy. I feel like Anthony Edwards wants to drive first. You could say Karl-Anthony Towns is 3-point first, but he's more of a bigger guy. I feel like they just need to find a guy, but he's more of a back down. He'll drive. He's a drive first too. But they need to find a guy that is a 3-point shooter first, and that's just that would be another weapon for them. I feel like they just had way too many guys on this team that are not shooters first and more drivers, and I feel like that kind of cost them with Mavericks being kind of the opposite and having more shooting than driving on their squad. But and also with the Pacers, I feel like they're also in the same boat as the Timberwolves, having not a whole lot of playoff experience, having really Pascal Siakam's their main guy that's had playoff experience, and those late turnovers in those games, not protecting the ball. They play at such a fast pace. In that game 4 and in game 1, they had late turnovers that just cost them the game. So if they would be able to just to slow down and just be able to slow down and just be able to take care of the ball. They might have won both those games, but obviously they didn't, and that's just going to come with more experience, knowing what to do in certain moments of these playoff series.
You're getting way ahead of me here. I'm still circling back on Minnesota here, and I mentioned Monte Morris, but there are only 2 other players on that Minnesota roster that had made it to a conference finals before this year. Could you name one of them?
Probably I would have to look at the roster. Probably one of the bench warmers. Well, Monte Morris wasn't he on the? He was on the Nuggets.
Yeah, Mike Conley and Kyle Anderson, where I believe were the other ones. Rudy Gobert had never even made it to a conference finals before this year. Like, that's what I'm saying. They had the second highest average payroll of these 5 teams as well. That's why I say that getting rid of Karl Anthony Towns would probably be one of the best decisions that Minnesota can make over the offseason. But you brought up Indiana. Their average experience heading after this on their roster this year, 4.2 years. That's the second lowest, next to Oklahoma City. Their starters' average experience was 4.4. In the conference finals and their entire roster of 15 players, a combined conference finals besides this year record of 3-1. And he mentioned it, the one NBA champion and Pascal, who won it with Toronto. And they also had the cheapest salary out of anybody. Very young team with a bright future, and now here's where I'll bring in Oklahoma City. They had the youngest roster, 4.07 years of experience. Their starting lineup averaged less than 2.5 years of experience. And when you talk about conference finals as an entire roster, 0-3 and 0 appearances in the NBA finals. Like, all 3 of these teams are both Indiana and Oklahoma City are super young. All 3 of those teams were super inexperienced. And at least Indiana and Oklahoma City, I believe they both have bright futures.
Yeah, it was actually, I think it was a stat it was last year that the Oklahoma college team had a higher combined age than the Thunder squad did last year in the NBA. And that was just kind of insane to think about, that their team was that young. And the Thunder, they're going to be a team to be reckoned with throughout the next 10 years in the NBA. And they still have draft picks too. And that's just what kind of amazes me, how good of a job their GM did when trading away Paul George, trading away Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, all those guys, Chris Paul. They plan for the future, and it's really working out for them.
What's also worked out for them is they've kept their head coach, Mark Dagnall, most experienced head coach. He has the longest tenure out of any of those 5 teams. He's been there for 4 years now. The next highest is Chris Finch with the Minnesota Timberwolves, who's been there for like 3.5 because he got there midway through season after they fired their previous head coach. So that's pretty amazing. But let's pivot into the NBA Finals. Boston, Dallas, and before we get into this, I want to keep listing off what I have found out. Both these have an average salary of over $10 million. Boston's is over $11 million. The average experience for both these teams, 2 highest out of those 5. Boston's over 5.5. Dallas over 5.25. The starting lineup experience, 8 years is the average for Boston. And that's not including the Al Horford lineup. That's with the Porzingis lineup. So that's crazy in its own right. And Dallas, their starters, average experience of 6.4 seasons. That's 3rd highest. And we're talking about experience. Boston, total experience from their 15 roster, 9-14 in conference finals with 1 champion. Drew Holiday back on the Bucks. The Dallas Mavericks, helped out a little bit by Kyrie Irving, 5-4 in conference finals, 2 champions. Kyrie has only won 1 championship. That's something we have to remind everybody with the Cavaliers. The other one, Markieff Morris with the Lakers. That's the other champion on the squad. Both these teams are very experienced. They're a little bit older. That's the reason why they're here, Cade.
Yeah, that's 100%. Having playoff experience and finals appearances is such a vital fact of making it this far into the playoffs. And when you have a point guard like Drew Holiday for the Celtics, he is just such a rock on the defense side of the ball for the Celtics. And it's just the series is about there's multiple different storylines you could talk about here. Kyrie returning to Boston, Porzingis returning to Dallas in this series, but I think it really comes down to Jason Tatum. It's Jason Tatum's time to prove himself. He has kind of underperformed in these past playoffs, and here this is his time to be the star of this series and to be able to win it for Boston, because he's been kind of the ridiculed over the last couple of years for not getting it done. And I feel like it really comes down to how good Jason Tatum plays for this Boston Celtics squad and how if they can win this series against this Dallas Mavericks team, because you know that Luka and Kyrie are gonna get their points. It's just kind of impossible to kind of stop those dudes, but it's gonna come down to see if Jason Tatum can keep up with those guys and see how the role players play for each of these teams. I feel like it's gonna come down to Jason Tatum, and we'll see how these role players play as well.
I also believe the key belongs with Boston, but not with Tatum. I believe the key comes down to whether Porzingis is playing or not, because we saw what happened with the Timberwolves. They had an elite guys in the paint. You had Rudy Gobert, you had Karl-Anthony Towns, you had Naz Reid. You had elite big guys right there. But there was no match for the Slam City tandem of Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively. It comes down to whether Porzingis is available to play. I believe that is the game changer in this series. And let's not forget, Dallas is a 5 seed, yes. But would they have been ranked number 5 by a seeding committee? No, they would not. They would have been seeded much higher. Because you got to realize what they did during the season. Before acquiring P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford, they were 29 and 23. Since then, they have been 33 and 14. This is a good Maverick squad, and they have made good moves to be in this situation. And they have a coach in Jason Kidd who has been here before with Dirk Nowitzki. This is a good squad, and I don't want to hear your picks yet. I'm not going to give mine quite yet. I just want to hear you talk about Dallas a little bit.
Yeah, watching Daniel Gafford, I kind of wrote that down. I think for last week's show, but I didn't really talk about it a whole lot. But he kind of reminds me of almost like a Draymond Green or a Dennis Rodman. But he's not as good as a passer as Draymond Green. But he gets dunks. He plays really good defense. He rebounds. He got multiple blocks against Karl-Anthony Towns in that series against the Timberwolves, and he's like the perfect center that you need to make it to the. Well, he's a little bit undersized for a center, even being at 6'10" is undersized today. But he has been so fun to watch for that Maverick squad, and also Derek Jones Jr. He's an athletic, lengthy guy that can really jump out of the gym, but he's been able to extend his 3-point range, and but then hopefully Derek Lively can get healthy again for these for the NBA Finals, because he is a huge factor for them off the bench for the Mavericks, being a big slashing guy and a defensive presence. But for the Celtics, I can agree with that. If Porzingis doesn't play, their big guy is Al Horford, and I think Al Horford is going to struggle against Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. So Porzingis is going to be a key if he can stay healthy and get back on the court for the Celtics squad to have a rim protector there for the Celtics, because I feel like the Celtics could struggle without Porzingis' presence there.
All right, so now it's time to give our selections. I think mine is going to surprise you. I don't want this to sway you in any direction. I doubt it would if I even told you it, but I want to hear yours first.
I'm going first. I've been going back and forth. I've just been like, I've been thinking Mavericks. I've been thinking Celtics. I was gonna go Mavericks, but I'm gonna. Everyone's talking about, oh, is Jason Tatum? Is he not gonna be able to step up? But I think he's gonna step up, and I think the Celtics team, with their depth of having a solid starting 5, then having multiple players off the bench that can come and step up for them, I think the Celtics are going to win the NBA Finals this year, and Jason Tatum's going to get over that final NBA Finals hump. I think the Celtics are going to win in 6 games over the Dallas Mavericks.
You went 6, bold. I am going the opposite direction as you. I don't think that should surprise you based on how I talked about Dallas and Porzingis' availability. He didn't play throughout the conference finals. They're saying he'll likely be back for the finals, but I just don't think. I think it's time that because Dallas hasn't won enough lately. The Texas Rangers just won the World Series. The Stars just made it to the Western Conference Finals. The Cowboys are the Cowboys. They haven't won enough. I'm going Dallas in 6 games. Call me crazy, but I just like that Gafford and Lively duo back there. And Kyrie and Luca are clutch and clutch moments. They're hard to guard. And I think you look at those 3 different keys, for me, I think that's what's going to set it apart.
Yeah, this series was so hard for me to pick. I couldn't whether the experience and the solid starting 5 of the Celtics of multiple different ways they can score, or the big guys, and then the two the dynamic duo of Kyrie and Luka, because they, as of late, have been unstoppable in these playoffs. The Timberwolves couldn't stop them. The Clippers obviously struggled with them, and then the Thunder struggled with them. They have been so good throughout these playoffs, but I can see this series going 6 or 7 games, and it's gonna be an exciting series, I think. And what you said, Mavericks in 6 too, or Mavericks in 7? 6. Okay, perfect. Both got 6 games, but opposite teams.
We'll see what happens. I can't wait. That one will be quite an intriguing series. We're going to take a quick break, but when we get back, it's time for the prediction panel parlay and what's on the mind for us this week.
You guys, I am so tired and I have a splitting headache. I just don't feel like myself.
How much water have you had today?
Not much. And why should I care about this anyway?
Hydration affects your mood, brain function, and improves sleep quality. There are many ways to stay hydrated.
And it's easier than you think. Eating water-rich fruits and vegetables is a great way to stay hydrated. You can also enjoy your favorite drinks like tea or juice.
Wow, I had no idea.
Staying hydrated is both important and easy. Listen to your body. Hydrate more.
For more information, go to thewholeu.uw.edu.
Back here on Bringing the Heat, it's time for the prediction panel parlay. And Kade, both of us have started out this new season 0-2. This last week, I went PWHL Minnesota, Real Madrid, and I picked Boston, and I think that was game 4. And then I went ahead and picked Dallas and game 4 over Minnesota. I went 3 for 4 last week. I was so close. And then let's read what you did. You went with Real Madrid as well. You went with Minnesota in game 4. You went with the Pacers in game 4. Boston got the sweep there. And then you went with the Huskers in game 1 over Florida in the college regionals. You went 2 for 4. So I think technically I have the upper hand. And so, I mean, I'm liking this. I'm feeling good. And I'm feeling so good, I'm going to give you my parlay right now. I'm going to go UFL. Give me Birmingham over Michigan, and give me St. Louis over San Antonio. In the NHL, give me the Panthers over Edmonton in game 1. And then in the NBA, minus me picking the Mavericks in 6, give me Boston in game 1. That is a total percentage odds of 19.7% of all 4 of those things happening.
That's very, very bold pick. I kind of pivoted to which I talked about earlier, who my prediction was for the softball championships, and I said that Oklahoma and Stanford are going to be my 2 teams that are advancing into the softball World Series championship. And then I think the Mavericks and Celtics are going to split games 1 and 2.
Interesting. They will split first 2 games. And I say that out loud, reconfirming what you said, because I'm trying to write it down before I flip my paper. But to what's on the mind, we're going to have this last week, but then we decided to talk about Angel Hernandez a little bit. But what's on the mind this week? What are some of the dumbest rules in sports? I mean, back whenever I came up with this idea, we had just had the offensive goaltending, which called back a bucket when Minnesota was up 2, could have made them up 4. We had the out of bounds call, and the missed foul, even though they reviewed the play in the NBA. That was game 2 of the Timberwolves whenever they're up 2. You get the theme that I'm going with. And then in the White Sox game, they also had this infield fly rule where they were ruled for runners interference, which ended the game. And so there's just so many to go with. I really don't like the fact that there's runners interference on an infield fly rule because the batter's out anyway. And then offensive goaltending, like, come on, why does offensive goaltending even exist, Kate? I don't know what else you came up with. I know I have more though.
Yeah, I was like kind of blanking on what was some dumb rules, but now that you've talked about it, I don't like the defensive 3 seconds rule in the NBA. Now that I think about it, it's just I feel like it makes it too easy on the offense to score. I feel like in European and the Euroball, there is no defense of 3 seconds, so they can sit in the paint, play defense, and it just makes it way harder on the defense to score because when you don't have a player sitting in the paint the whole time, it is so easy to get to the rim. And I feel like if the NBA got rid of that rule, I feel like the games would be a lot less low scoring and the defense would be a lot better. But I have multiple different rules that I did not like, but that was just kind of the first one that just ran into my mind.
Let the players camp out in the paint. I'm good with it. Let's have some fun. Get rid of the offensive 3 seconds rule while we're at it. Come on, let's have some fun with it.
Absolutely not. No.
All right.
No, I'm not on board with that as a former 6'3" post player. I'm not a fan of that.
All right. Also, mention it. If you're gonna have the ability to review a play, please review the entire portion of the play and get the call right. If there's a foul on that play, I don't care if they didn't call on the court. If you're reviewing it, call the foul. I mean, that's just plain and simple. And now, here's another one that's very common. In football, people don't like it whenever there's an offensive touchback on a fumble outside of the end zone. And I'm like, hold on to the ball. Just hold on to the ball. It's not that hard. Don't be so aggressive. I get it. But I'm not really against that rule.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people complain when the ball or even hits the pylon and it's a touchback. I feel like ball security is important, and that's what football is all about, is taking care of the ball. And if you can't take care of the ball well enough, the ball goes out the back of the end zone, it's a touchback, that's your own fault. And some other rules, just kind of looking around here now that I think about it, the possession arrow in college basketball and high school basketball, I feel like if you get a jump ball, I feel like, and you fight for the jump ball, you should be able to tip it up. I feel like you should get a chance to get the ball back.
No.
But because that's if
you
you're
say
really,
that as a 6'4" post player.
Yeah, we're getting. I want the yeah. Jump ball is all about timing, Elijah. As being a 6'3" post player in Class A basketball, I had a winning record in jump balls. Going back and
I'm going the opposite route of you. I want to get rid of jump balls in the NBA. Bring back the possession arrow. Give us a possession arrow. Come on, why not? I don't care. That's what I stand for here.
If we're going to preach hustle and you're not going to not have a chance to get the ball, what's the point?
And also, while we're on basketball, can we get rid of halves in college men's basketball? Internationals quarters, high schoolers quarters, and a lot of places, quarters in the NBA, quarters in women's basketball. Can we please get quarters in men's college hoops?
Yeah, I just interesting why, because the women's were halves for a while, but I feel like it obviously for marketing and promotional things, they would make a lot more money with breaks if they did 4 quarters, and I cannot stand 4 media timeouts throughout a half. So I feel like they definitely just need to get rid of that and go quarters. I like that. I like that rule change, but I feel like it's not necessarily. Another one for me is just NFL rules in general. The consistency of the rules need to change. The consistency of the rules. What's a catch? What's not a catch? They need to figure out what's a catch. We need to remember what football is. What is a catch? They need to go through that. Roughing the passer. We need to go back. Roughing the passer should be when you hit the quarterback late. That is what roughing the passer had been forever. But now if you hit the quarterback low, it's flag. Hit them high, flag. Hit them late, flag. I'm okay with that. But we need to have some consistency on that. And I feel like the targeting rule. I feel like they should at least give, it has to be, maybe I go to 2 warnings. If you one targeting call and you're out, it's sometimes they don't even mean to hit them like that. It's just a bang bang play and they can't happen. I feel like if they get 2 targeting calls, they're ejected. And I feel like one targeting call and you're ejected is just way too. It's just way too harsh of a penalty if you're not even necessarily meaning to launch at somebody like that. Or maybe they can
I'm
go to a
actually gonna agree
flagrant
with you
one or
on that.
flagrant two system like that. I don't know.
I actually am gonna agree with you on that targeting side of things. But while we're in college football, why are we down without contact in college football? Like, if you fall down to the ground while catching the ball, just because your knee hits the ground, come on, let them keep running. Come on, we want some offense here. Give us it.
Yeah, it's funny to see that sometimes in all-star games they'll do NFL rules, and then like these college players have never played that way and they're like, oh crap, I can actually go. But I'd like to see that rule in college sports or college football.
And also, while we're at it, like, I'm gonna go to golf. If this is 2024, why are we still using golf carts, for one? And two, if you accidentally turn it in unsigned, why are you getting disqualified? I know it's a stupid thing that you should remember to sign your card, but the fact that golf carts are still around in 2024, like, come on, can we move to some electronic system, for crying out loud?
Yeah, because that's how because Jordan Spieth got in trouble for that because he signed his scorecard incorrectly, had one score wrong, and I feel like if we can just because that's a thing that I do. So I play in a lot of disc golf tournaments, and everything is electronically, so there isn't anything that happens like that wrong. And I feel like the PGA has to go to something like that where they can just punch in the numbers. Hey, what'd you get? Did you get a birdie? Did you get a par? Let's plug this into our phone or whatever device we're using, and you got a par, you got a birdie, you got a bogey. I feel like they have to go to something like that.
It's just silly in this day and age. I don't know if you have any other ones on your list. I know that I had a couple, but I just was kind of gonna leave it at that. But like, I just want to. I'm just an advocate for less rules in general. Like, come on, let's let these people play. Let's give the rest less of an opportunity to make it all about them. Like, come on, let's do it.
Yeah, everybody wants to see the players play, not the refs turn their mics and having to make it all about themselves. Because some refs definitely do that for sure. Talking to some coaches that are in my family around me, that refs want to make it about themselves sometimes and be like, "Oh, I can make this call," and we don't want that. We want to watch the players play, and we want to see their talents being shown.
Yes,
100%.
unless it prevents us from having a great moment like UConn and Iowa. I get that it was an it was a moving screen on the offense in UConn, but please, come on. We wanted to see the Paige Beckers 3. We wanted to see that game go to overtime. Yeah, I'm still gonna drag that conversation on all the way past June 3rd here.
And same here. I'm thinking about another moment was with the Saints and Rams and that, and in the NFC Championship game when there was no pass interference call, and that was the one time where it was pass interference. It wasn't anything ticky tacky. It was pretty blatant. I feel like a lot of people that could barely watch football and know the rules somewhat would call a flag on that.
All right, UFL. There's a thing. In the UFL, there's a thing called a super challenge. You won a game, whether it's right or wrong. You can challenge anything you want. And they also have transparency in the reviews. The two things that I'm going to ask for as we close out this episode: can we get more transparency in sports whenever we're doing a review? And can we have a super challenge available and where coaches can challenge anything that they want, and as long as they get one of those a game, and as long as they get it right, they get it back. Like, come on, let's let these coaches get calls right, and let's get more calls right in the basis of playing, because refs make mistakes. It happens, but let's not let them be game-altering mistakes.
Yeah, I would enjoy seeing that in the NFL if they would get that, and finding a way to make reviews shorter as well. If they could find a way to do that, and making things more efficient and making the game as pure as it can be.
That was a nice venting session about rules in sports. This episode even surpassed last week's length, but we hope you guys all enjoyed it. Any final thoughts from you, Kade?
Nothing really. That's about it for me.
All right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. There's a lot to cover we managed to get almost all of it in. And my notes for this episode, normally I have about 2 or 3 pages. I wrote 5 pages of notes. I did way more research than I normally do, but it made for a really fun episode. And Kade, I'll talk to you next week, and we'll see you guys all again later on in the next episode of Bring the Heat. Have a great week, everybody.
You've been listening to Bringing the Heat, a 91.1 KLPR sports production. You can listen to all episodes wherever you get your podcasts.